Commander Zixthala stretched his long, pale arms and felt the familiar vibration of his ship's living hull beneath his feet. The biocruiser devouring light pulsed gently through space, its organic engines breathing in cosmic radiation and converting it to movement. Around him, 11 other ships of the hegemony fleet moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the wet shine of living tissue. "Another empty sector," muttered Subcommander Krelax from his position at the nerve cluster that served as their control station. His 6 eyes flickered with boredom as he monitored the biosensors. 3 cycles without contact. The rim worlds grow quiet. Zixthala nodded, his mandibles clicking with mild annoyance. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had ruled this part of the galaxy. Their bioships were works of art and terror, grown rather than built, alive rather than mechanical. Each vessel was a predator, designed to hunt and kill with elegant brutality. The sight of a hegemony fleet had made entire star systems surrender without firing a shot. But lately, the outer rim had become boring. Too many worlds had already fallen. Too many species had learned to submit at the first sight of their organic warships. Zixthala missed the old days when enemies would at least try to fight back. "Commander," Krelax said, his voice carrying a note of interest for the first time in days. "I detect something unusual. Grid 77 Alpha." Zixthala moved to the viewing membrane, a transparent section of the ship's hull that could focus like a giant eye. The stars shifted as the devouring light turned its attention to the coordinates. At first he saw nothing but empty space and distant stars. Then the sensors found it. "By the void," Zixthala whispered. "What is that thing?" The object on their screens defied easy description. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of their largest biocruiser. But where hegemony ships flowed with organic curves and pulsing bioluminescence, this thing was all angles and hard edges. It looked like someone had taken a mountain and covered it in metal plates and weapon ports. "It appears to be artificial," Krelax reported, his voice uncertain. "But the construction methods are unknown. No biological components detected. The entire structure appears to be dead." "Dead?" Zixthala felt a chill run through his carapace. How can something that large be completely lifeless and still function? The sensor readings made no sense. The vessel was constructed entirely of refined metals and synthetic materials. No living tissue anywhere. Yet it moved through space with purpose, clearly under intelligent control. It was like discovering a corpse that could walk and think. Meanwhile, 3,000 kilometers away, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Dakota and studied the tactical display with professional interest. The massive human dreadnought hummed with the sound of fusion reactors and electronic systems, a symphony of mechanical precision that had become as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. 12 contacts, Captain," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from the tactical station. Her fingers danced over holographic controls as she analyzed the incoming ships. "Unknown configuration. They're not in any of our databases." Morrison nodded, his weathered face calm despite the historic nature of the moment. At 52, he had served in the colonial navy for 30 years, fighting pirates and rebels among the outer colonies. But this was different. This was first contact with a genuine alien species. "Distance?" he asked. 4,000 kilometers and closing. Their approach vector suggests they're not trying to avoid us. Morrison studied the alien ships on his screen. They were beautiful in their own way, like living creatures swimming through space. But beauty didn't make them less dangerous. In his experience, the most dangerous enemies were often the most elegant ones. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Lisa Park from her station, "I'm detecting some kind of energy buildup in their weapon systems. Not sure what type, but it's definitely weapon grade." "Understood." "Amy, what's our tactical assessment?" Lieutenant Foster's report was crisp and professional. 12 ships, each approximately 400 meters long. Energy. Signatures suggest bioorganic construction. Weapons appear to be energy-based, possibly plasma or particle beams. No kinetic weapons detected. Morrison raised an eyebrow. "No kinetic weapons at all?" "None, sir. It's like they've never heard of railguns or missile systems. That was interesting. In Morrison's experience, any species that reached space would naturally develop kinetic weapons. They were simple, reliable, and effective. Energy weapons were flashier, but they had limitations that kinetic systems didn't. Engineering. Morrison called to Chief Pete Collins. "How are we looking?" "All systems green, Captain," came the reply. From the engine room. "Reactors at full power, armor systems charged, point defense online. The Dakota is ready for whatever they want to throw at us." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. The Dakota was the pride of the colonial fleet, a testament to human engineering and military thinking. Where the alien ships looked like sea creatures, the Dakota looked like exactly what it was. A fortress designed to fight and win battles in the vacuum of space. "Sir," Amy Foster reported, "they're slowing down. It looks like they want to talk. Or they want to get close enough for their weapons to be effective," Morrison replied. "Either way, we'll be ready. Lisa, prepare to open a channel if they try to communicate. Amy, keep all weapon systems ready, but don't target them yet. Let's see what they want." The two fleets continued to close the distance, each representing a completely different approach to space warfare. The hegemony ships moved with fluid grace, their living hulls rippling with bioluminescent patterns that served both as communication and intimidation. They had conquered hundreds of worlds with their combination of biological weapons and superior technology. The human ship moved with mechanical precision, every system calibrated for maximum efficiency. It represented humanity's first serious attempt at building a warship designed specifically for combat against unknown alien threats. Neither side fully understood what they were about to encounter. Commander Zixthala watched the human vessel grow larger on his screens and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Uncertainty. The alien ship's design made no sense according to everything the hegemony knew about space warfare. It was too large, too heavily armored, and too obviously designed for prolonged combat. "Commander," Krelak said quietly, "perhaps we should call for reinforcements." Zixthala's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. 12 bio-cruisers against one alien vessel? What kind of commander would I be if I called for help against such odds? But even as he said it, something deep in his genetic memory whispered warnings. This was not going to be like their previous conquests. The two forces continued their approach, neither knowing that this moment would change the balance of power in their entire sector of the galaxy. The hegemony fleet moved into their traditional attack formation with practiced ease. The 12 bio-cruisers spread out in a flowing pattern that looked like a hunting pack of space predators. Each ship pulsed with different colors, creating a light show that had terrorized countless worlds across the galaxy. Commander Zixthala felt the familiar rush of anticipation as his fleet prepared for what should be a simple conquest. The Devouring Light and her sister ships had performed this dance hundreds of times. First came the intimidation display, then the surrender demand, then either submission or a brief one-sided battle. "Weapon organisms are charging," reported Krelax, his 6 eyes gleaming with excitement. "Acid pods ready, plasma feeders active, viral spores prepared for deployment." The bioweapons were works of art in themselves. Each ship carried living ammunition that could eat through metal, melt armor, or infect enemy systems with consuming biological agents. No known material could resist them for long. "Begin the approach pattern," Zixthala commanded. "Standard intimidation sequence. Let them see what they face." The alien ships began their attack run, moving in the graceful spirals that had become their signature across the galaxy. Their hulls rippled with threatening colors, while weapon ports opened like hungry mouths. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across their surfaces, telling the story of conquest and death in living light. On the bridge of the USS Dakota, Captain Morrison watched the alien formation with professional interest. The ships moved beautifully, he had to admit, like a school of deadly fish preparing to strike. "Interesting pattern," he commented to Lieutenant Amy Foster. "Very coordinated. They've done this before." Amy nodded, her hand steady on the tactical controls despite the historic nature of the moment. "It's definitely a practiced maneuver, sir. Looks like they're trying to surround us. Let them, Morrison said calmly. Lisa, any attempt at communication yet? Communications Officer Lisa Park shook her head. Nothing, sir. But I'm detecting a lot of activity on various frequencies. Might be internal communications. Morrison studied the approaching ships with the eye of a veteran warrior. Their formation was impressive, but it had a fatal flaw. They were positioning themselves as if they expected their enemy to stay still and accept whatever they planned to do. Amy, turn us to face them, he ordered. Aye, sir. The USS Dakota began to rotate on its axis with mechanical precision. The massive dreadnought moved like a fortress, deciding which wall to present to attackers. Its movement was deliberate, calculated, and utterly without fear. This was the moment everything changed. As the human warship turned, the alien fleet got their first clear look at what they were facing. The Dakota's true size became apparent as it presented its full profile. The ship was not just large, it was impossibly overwhelmingly massive. It dwarfed their largest biocruiser like a mountain compared to a tree. But size was not what froze the hegemony fleet in space. It was the weapons. The Dakota's hull was covered with weapon systems like a metal porcupine. Railgun turrets the size of buildings tracked smoothly as the ship turned. Missile launch tubes clustered in groups of dozens. Point defense lasers bristled from every surface. The ship carried more firepower than some entire planetary defense fleets. By the void, whispered Krelax, his voice barely audible. What kind of species builds something like that? But even that was not what stopped the alien hearts from beating. As the Dakota completed its turn, every weapon system on the massive ship suddenly locked onto a different target. 12 alien ships found themselves simultaneously targeted by weapons they did not understand, guided by sensors that seemed to see through their biohulls like they were made of glass. The targeting was perfect. Not approximately correct, not close enough for space combat, but mathematically perfect. Each railgun was aimed at the exact center of mass of its assigned target. Each missile tube was angled to intercept the most likely evasion routes. Each energy weapon had calculated the precise angle needed to penetrate alien armor at maximum efficiency. In the space of 3 heartbeats, the human ship had acquired firing solutions for 12 different targets moving in complex patterns. The calculations involved were staggering. Even the hegemony's best biocomputers needed minutes to achieve such precision. The Dakota had done it in seconds. Commander. Krelax's voice shook with something the hegemony had forgotten existed. Fear. They have target locks on all our ships, all of them, at the same time. Zixthala stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The human ship's targeting system showed as a web of interconnected lines, each one representing a weapons solution that could destroy a biocruiser with single shots. The precision was impossible. No species could process that much tactical data that quickly. How? He whispered. How can one ship target our entire fleet? On the Dakota's bridge, Lieutenant Amy Foster reported with professional calm. All targets acquired, sir. Firing solutions locked and updated in real time. They've stopped moving. Captain Morrison nodded, unsurprised. He had seen this reaction before, though never from aliens. There was something deeply unsettling about being targeted by weapons you could not understand, guided by computers that seemed to think faster than biological minds could process. Engineering, he called to Chief Pete Collins. Power levels? All systems nominal, Captain. Reactors barely above idle. We could maintain this level of operation for weeks without strain. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. The Dakota's computer systems were drawing less power than a small city, but they were processing tactical information at a rate that would have been impossible for any biological intelligence. Quantum processors and artificial intelligence worked together to create a targeting system that could handle hundreds of simultaneous targets without strain. The alien fleet hung motionless in space, each ship locked in the crosshairs of weapons they could not comprehend. Their graceful attack formation had become a death trap. Every move they made was already calculated and countered by the human ship's computers. For the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, a hegemony fleet had been stopped cold by pure technological superiority. Commander Zixthala tried to process what he was seeing. His bioships were living creatures able to adapt and evolve in combat. But adaptation took time, and evolution took generations. The human ship was simply faster. Its artificial brain could think and react at electronic speeds while his organic ships were still processing what they had encountered. "Commander," one of his sub-commanders called from another ship. "What are your orders?" Zixthala stared at the human vessel and realized he had no orders to give. Every tactical manual, every battle plan, every strategy the hegemony had developed assumed they would be fighting slower, less sophisticated enemies. They had never encountered a species that could outthink them in real time. The human ship waited with mechanical patience, while the alien fleet remained frozen in space, caught between advance and retreat, unable to process the reality of their situation. For 30 years, Captain Morrison had fought human enemies who thought and reacted like humans. But he had always wondered what would happen when humanity encountered an alien intelligence that thought differently. Now he knew. They would freeze, just like humans would, when faced with something their experience could not explain. The Dakota's weapons remained locked on target, waiting for orders that Morrison hoped he would not have to give. The silence in space stretched for long minutes. 12 alien biocruisers hung motionless while one massive human warship waited with mechanical patience. On both sides, minds struggled to understand what they were facing. Captain Morrison finally broke the deadlock. He had spent 30 years in space, and he knew that someone had to make the first move. In his experience, it was better to be the one talking than the one listening. "Lisa, open a channel to all the alien ships," he ordered. Communications Officer Lisa Park's fingers moved across her controls. "Channel open, sir. Broadcasting on all frequencies." Morrison stepped forward, his image now visible on screens throughout the alien fleet. He was not an impressive figure by most standards. A middle-aged human in a simple blue uniform, gray hair cut short, face marked by years of service in space. But there was something in his calm demeanor that spoke of absolute confidence. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Colonial Navy," he said in a clear, steady voice. "You are in human space. State your intentions." The words hit the alien fleet like a physical blow. Not because they were threatening, but because they were so direct. No elaborate titles, no artistic speeches, no complex diplomatic protocols. Just a simple question that demanded a simple answer. Commander Zixthala stared at the human's image on his viewing screen. In 3,000 years of conquest, no one had ever asked the hegemony to explain their presence anywhere. They were the hegemony. Their presence was explanation enough. "Sub-Commander," he whispered to Krelax. "How do we respond to such a question?" Krelax's 6 eyes blinked in confusion. "I do not know, Commander. The question makes no sense. We are the hegemony. We go where we choose." But even as they spoke, both aliens realized how weak that answer sounded when faced with the human captain's simple directness. The human had not asked who they were or what they wanted to take. He had asked what they intended to do. It was a question that assumed they had a choice in the matter. Zixthala drew himself up to his full height and activated his own communication system. When he spoke, his voice carried the full authority of 3 millennia of unquestioned power. "I am Commander Zixthala of the Hegemony Fleet. We are the masters of this sector. You will surrender your vessel and submit to our authority." The words that had conquered 100 worlds sounded hollow in the vast emptiness of space. On the Dakota's bridge, several human officers exchanged glances. Lieutenant Amy Foster actually suppressed what might have been a smile. Captain Morrison's response was delivered in the same calm tone he had used before. "I see. And if we decline your offer?" The question caught Zixthala off guard again. In hegemony experience, surrender demands were either accepted immediately or answered with desperate attacks. No one had ever asked for clarification. "Then you will be destroyed," Zixthala replied, falling back on the standard hegemony response. "Understood," Morrison said, with the tone of someone acknowledging a weather report. "Lisa, Close the channel. The communication ended, leaving the alien fleet in stunned silence. The human captain had received their ultimate threat with the same casual interest he might show to a minor inconvenience. "Commander," Krelax whispered. He did not seem concerned by our threat. Zixthala was beginning to understand that this encounter was unlike anything in hegemony experience, but he was a veteran commander with a reputation to maintain. Pride and training demanded that he follow through on his threat. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Deploy spore clouds and prepare acid launchers." The hegemony fleet burst into action. Their bioships pulsed with deadly purpose as weapon organisms prepared to release their loads. Clouds of corrosive spores erupted from launch tubes, creating expanding spheres of death that had melted the hulls of countless enemy vessels. The spores were the hegemony's most feared weapon. Each microscopic organism was designed to eat through any known material, reproducing rapidly as it consumed matter and energy. Entire ships had been reduced to empty shells in minutes when caught in a spore cloud. Millions of the deadly organisms spread through space toward the human warship, glowing with their own internal bioluminescence. It was a beautiful and terrifying sight. Death given form and set loose in the vacuum. On the Dakota's bridge, sensors detected the approaching spore cloud immediately. Chief Pete Collins's voice came over the communication system from engineering. "Captain, I'm reading some kind of biological material approaching our position. Looks like microscopic organisms of some kind." Morrison nodded calmly. "Defensive measures, Chief." "Already on it, sir. Point defense systems are tracking the cloud. What happened next would be talked about in alien military academies for generations, though few would believe the reports." The Dakota's point defense grid activated with mechanical precision. Hundreds of small laser arrays emerged from hidden ports across the ship's hull. Each laser was no bigger than a human finger, designed to intercept incoming missiles and debris. But human military engineers had built them to be very, very precise. The laser grid began firing in rapid pulses, each beam lasting only microseconds. To human eyes, it looked like a light show, tiny flashes of coherent light sparking across the space between the ships. To the alien spores, it was targeted extinction. Each laser pulse struck and destroyed thousands of the microscopic organisms. The computer systems controlling the defense grid calculated the exact frequency needed to disrupt the spore's biological processes, then delivered that energy with surgical precision. In the space of 30 seconds, millions of deadly organisms were reduced to harmless carbon compounds floating in space. The most feared weapon in the hegemony arsenal had been completely neutralized by what the humans considered basic defensive systems. The alien fleet watched in horror as their ultimate weapon simply vanished, eliminated by technology they did not understand operating at speeds they could not match. "Impossible," breathed Krelax. "The spores can eat through anything. They have destroyed battle fleets." But Commander Zixthala was beginning to understand a terrible truth. The spores could eat through anything the hegemony knew about. But the humans had built their ship from materials and principles that the aliens had never encountered. On the Dakota, Chief Collins reported the results with professional satisfaction. "Threat neutralized, Captain. Point defense worked perfectly. Should I be worried about this stuff?" Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the now harmless remains of the alien attack, then at the frozen enemy fleet on his main screen. His response was transmitted automatically to the alien ships through the still-open monitoring channel. Was that supposed to be an attack? The question hung in space like a physical weight. The hegemony had just deployed their most feared weapon, and the human captain was asking if it qualified as an attack. Commander Zixthala felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. The cold certainty that he was completely out of his depth. These humans did not just have better weapons or stronger ships. They thought about warfare in ways that made hegemony tactics seem like children playing with toys. The bioships hung in space, their commanders struggling to process what they had witnessed. For the first time in 3,000 years, a hegemony attack had been casually dismissed as inadequate, and the human ship waited patiently for their next move, its weapons still locked on target, its crew calmly ready for whatever the aliens might try next. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted and only one side fully understood what had happened. The communication channel remained open between the human ship and the alien fleet. What followed was not the usual exchange of threats and demands that marked most first contact situations. Instead, it became something far more terrifying for the hegemony, a casual conversation that revealed the true scope of what they faced. Commander Zix Thala, still reeling from the complete failure of his spore attack, tried to regain control of the situation. His pride and 3,000 years of hegemony dominance demanded that he show strength, even in the face of this impossible enemy. "Human vessel," he transmitted, his voice carrying forced authority. "You have witnessed only a fraction of our power. Surrender now, and your death will be swift." Captain Morrison's response came back with the same calm tone he had maintained throughout the encounter. "Lisa, are you getting good recordings of all this? Command is going to want detailed reports." The casual comment, meant for internal communication, reached the alien fleet through the open channel. The implications struck the hegemony commanders like ice water in their veins. The human captain was not treating this as a desperate battle for survival. He was treating it as a routine patrol encounter that would require paperwork when he got home. "Sir," came Lieutenant Amy Foster's voice over the channel. "Based on their formation and weapon signatures, these appear to be patrol vessels. Intelligence suggests their standard tactics rely on biological warfare and energy weapons. Our kinetic barriers should be completely effective against anything they can deploy." The professional analysis reached alien ears with devastating clarity. The human tactical officer had studied their ships for a few minutes, and already understood their capabilities better than some hegemony commanders understood their own vessels. But worse was the casual dismissal of weapons that had conquered star systems. Completely effective meant the humans were not just confident. They were certain that nothing the aliens could do would even damage their ship. Sub-Commander Krelax leaned close to Zix Thala and whispered urgently, "Commander, they speak as if this encounter is routine for them, as if they have faced fleets like ours before." "Impossible," Zix Thala replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "We are the only spacefaring power in this sector." On the Dakota's bridge, Communications Officer Lisa Park looked up from her console with interest. "Captain, I'm intercepting their internal communications. They're not using any encryption. Should I translate what they're saying?" Morrison nodded. "Put it on speaker. Let's see what they're thinking." The alien voices filled the bridge, automatically translated by the ship's computers. The humans listened with growing amazement as the hegemony commanders revealed their confusion and growing fear. "How many ships do they have?" one alien voice asked. "This cannot be their entire fleet," another replied. "No species sends a single ship to face the hegemony." "But if this is just one ship, where are the others?" Lieutenant Amy Foster looked at her captain with surprise. "Sir, they think we're the advanced scout for a larger fleet." Morrison considered this information. The aliens had sent 12 ships to investigate what they thought was empty space. That suggested they were either very confident or very stupid. Given their reaction to his ship, he was beginning to think it was the former. "Chief Collins," Morrison called to engineering, "what's our status on the new weapon systems? Command wanted field testing data." The chief's voice came back cheerfully. "All systems green, Captain. The new railguns are performing perfectly. Reactor output is steady. We could maintain full combat readiness for weeks without strain." The conversation, still being transmitted to the alien fleet, hit the hegemony like a series of hammer blows. The humans were not just unafraid. They were disappointed. They had come here hoping for a real test of their weapons, and 12 alien ships were apparently not enough to provide meaningful data. Commander Zix Thala felt his world collapsing around him. These humans spoke of his fleet, 12 biocruisers that had conquered dozens of worlds, as if it were a minor training exercise. "Lisa," Morrison continued, "send a message to Admiral Chen. Tell her we've made contact with local aliens. Current threat assessment is minimal. Request instructions for next phase of exploration." The message that reached alien sensors was automatically translated and distributed through the hegemony fleet. The effect was immediate and devastating. Admiral Chen. There was an Admiral Chen, which meant there were more human ships, many more, and this massive, impossibly powerful warship was just one vessel in a fleet large enough to require an admiral. Commander, Krelax's voice was barely a whisper. If this ship requires an admiral to command the fleet it belongs to, how many ships do the humans have? Zix Thala could not answer. In hegemony experience, admirals commanded hundreds of ships. If the humans followed similar patterns, they possessed a fleet that dwarfed anything the hegemony had ever assembled. The communication channel crackled as another voice joined the conversation from the human ship. Captain Morrison, this is Ensign Kelly in sensor analysis. I'm reading interesting energy patterns from the alien ships. Their power systems appear to be biological in nature. I've never seen anything like it. Understood, Kelly. Add it to your report. The science teams back home will be fascinated. Science teams. The humans had science teams studying alien technology. They were not just warriors. They were researchers, explorers, people who studied new things with systematic curiosity, rather than simply destroying them. But what terrified the aliens most was the tone of these conversations. The humans were not excited by first contact with an alien species. They were not awed by the hegemony's organic technology. They were mildly interested, the way scientists might be interested in discovering a new type of bacteria. Captain, Amy Foster reported, I'm getting some unusual readings from their weapons systems. It looks like they're charging up for another attack. Morrison sighed, a sound that carried clearly over the communication channel. Well, I suppose they have to try. It's probably required by their military protocols. Amy, make sure all defensive systems are ready. I don't want to have to explain battle damage to the repair crews. The casual dismissal of an impending attack by the combined firepower of 12 hegemony warships struck the alien fleet like a physical blow. The human captain was not preparing for a desperate battle. He was annoyed at the prospect of having to fill out damage reports. Commander Zix Thala stared at his tactical display and realized that everything he had believed about warfare, about power, about the hegemony's place in the galaxy, was wrong. These humans did not see his fleet as a threat. They saw it as an inconvenience. All ships, he transmitted to his fleet on a secure channel. Hold position. Do not attack. We need to reassess this situation. But even as he gave the order, Zix Thala knew that no amount of reassessment would change the fundamental truth he was facing. The hegemony had encountered a species that was not just more powerful than they were. It was a species that operated on a completely different level of warfare, technology, and thinking. And that species was apparently so confident in their superiority that they sent single ships to explore territory that the hegemony considered their own. The galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place, and the hegemony was no longer at the top of the food chain. The standoff continued for another hour. 12 alien biocruisers hung motionless in space while the massive human warship waited with mechanical patience. On both sides, commanders weighed their options and found them wanting. Captain Morrison had spent the time reviewing intelligence reports and consulting with his senior staff. The aliens had not attacked again after their failed spore assault, which suggested they were capable of learning. That was good. It meant they might be capable of reason. Amy, he said finally, what's your assessment of their current status? Lieutenant Amy Foster studied her tactical display before answering. They're maintaining formation but not charging weapons. Power levels suggest they're running normal operations, not preparing for combat. I think they're waiting to see what we do next. Morrison nodded. In his experience, that was usually a good sign. Enemies who wanted to fight did not wait around for conversations. Enemies who waited were usually looking for a way to avoid getting killed. Lisa, open a channel to their lead ship. The communication link activated, and once again Captain Morrison's image appeared on alien screens throughout the hegemony fleet. But this time, his message was different. Commander Zix Thala, Morrison said, using the alien's name with casual familiarity. I've been thinking about our situation. You came here with 12 ships expecting to find empty space. Instead, you found us. I imagine that's caused some problems for your mission planning. The direct acknowledgement of their tactical situation caught Zixathala off guard. In his experience, enemies either threatened or begged. They did not analyze tactical situations with professional detachment. "What do you propose, human?" Zixathala asked, his voice carefully neutral. Morrison smiled, and something in that expression made every alien watching suddenly nervous. It was not a cruel smile or a threatening one. It was the smile of someone who had thought through all the possibilities and found them satisfactory. "Here's what's going to happen," Morrison said in the same calm tone he had used throughout the encounter. "You're going to return to your superiors with a message. Humanity claims this entire sector. Any hegemony ships found here after 72 hours will be destroyed without warning. This is not a negotiation." The words hit the alien fleet like a physical force. In 3,000 years of conquest, no one had ever given the hegemony an ultimatum. They were the ones who made demands. They were the ones who set deadlines. "You are one ship against the might of the hegemony," Zixathala replied, falling back, on the strength that had served his people for millennia. "We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Our fleets number in the hundreds. You cannot stand against such power." Morrison's response came back immediately, delivered with the confidence that had defined humanity's expansion into space. "Then you should know what conquest looks like." The simple statement carried more weight than any threat could have. It suggested that humans had conquered before, that they understood the process, and that they were confident in their ability to do it again. "Chief Collins," Morrison continued, speaking to his engineering officer but knowing the aliens were listening, "give them a demonstration of what we're talking about." From deep within the USS Dakota came a sound that had never been heard in this part of the galaxy. It started as a low hum that seemed to come from the ship's very bones, then built into something that resonated through space itself. The alien bioships, with their sensitive organic hulls, felt the vibration like a physical touch. The Dakota's main railgun was charging. The weapon that powered up was not like anything in hegemony experience, where their bioweapons relied on living ammunition and organic chemistry. The human railgun was pure physics made manifest. Magnetic coils the size of buildings generated electromagnetic fields so powerful, they created their own gravitational distortions. The charging process took 30 seconds. 30 seconds during which every alien in the fleet watched their sensors register energy levels that defied belief. The human ship was preparing to fire a weapon that drew more power than entire hegemony battle stations. "Sir," Amy Foster reported calmly, "main gun charged and ready. Target selected." Morrison nodded to his tactical officer. "Fire." The railgun discharged with a flash of light that briefly outshone the local sun. A tungsten rod weighing several tons accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed in the space of a few hundred meters. The projectile streaked through space between the fleets and continued toward its target, a large asteroid floating in the distance. The impact was visible to the naked eye. The asteroid, a chunk of rock and metal several kilometers across, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, solid and permanent. The next moment it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma that glowed like a newborn star. The demonstration was perfect in its simplicity. No exotic weapons, no mysterious technology, just kinetic energy applied with devastating precision. The aliens watched their sensors try to calculate the amount of force required to achieve such destruction, and found the numbers almost meaningless. "Kinetic energy," Morrison explained conversationally to the stunned alien fleet. "We find it very reliable." The understatement broke something in the hegemony commanders. They had just witnessed the casual destruction of an asteroid larger than some of their space stations, delivered by a weapon that the humans described as reliable. "Commander," Zixathala stared at the expanding plasma cloud that had once been solid matter, and felt the last of his confidence crumble. The humans had not just demonstrated superior firepower, they had demonstrated a level of technological sophistication that made hegemony weapons seem primitive by comparison. "Commander," Krelax whispered, We must withdraw. This is not a battle. We can win. For the first time in his military career, Zixthala agreed with a retreat order, but he was also a professional soldier, and he understood the implications of what he had witnessed. "Human captain," he transmitted, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. "Your message will be delivered." Morrison nodded with professional satisfaction. "I thought it might be. You have 72 hours, Commander. I suggest you use them wisely." The hegemony fleet began its slow turn away from human space, their graceful bioships moving with none of their earlier confidence. As they prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, Morrison's voice reached them one final time. "Commander, Zixthala," the human captain said, his tone almost friendly. "When you report to your superiors, make sure they understand one thing. This was just a patrol ship. We have much larger vessels if the situation requires them." The communication ended, leaving the alien fleet to contemplate the implications as they fled toward home. If the Dakota was just a patrol ship, what did human battle fleets look like? As the biocruisers disappeared into hyperspace, Captain Morrison turned to his tactical officer. "Amy, think they'll be back?" Lieutenant Foster considered the question seriously. "Oh, they'll be back, sir. But next time they'll bring everything they have." Morrison smiled and settled back into his command chair. "Should be more interesting." On the bridge of the USS Dakota, the crew returned to routine patrol duties. They had just changed the balance of power in an entire sector of the galaxy, but for them, it was simply another day of doing their jobs. In the depths of space, the plasma cloud that had once been an asteroid continued to expand, a glowing reminder of what happened when humanity decided to make a point. The galaxy was about to become a very different place.